Hello. In today's video I'd like to review one of my recent games, and this game is interesting because this can probably be classified as a typical loss that all chess players at some point run into, and where you would think you were doing everything more or less correctly, you can't spot an obvious mistake, and you just lose the game. And I'll show exactly what I mean by this. So I was playing with the white pieces against a slightly higher rated player. The game was played with the 15-minute per game time control, so it's a relatively relaxed time control on the Internet Chess Club. And we have this opening in the c3 Sicilian where black plays knight to f6 and d6, and he seems to be allowing white to have a strong center, but at the same time, after bishop d3 he also immediately attacks it, and we get some type of Spanish opening type of structure. White really has a choice here to keep the tension, to push the pawn with d5, or to exchange on e5. And I thought it would be simple for me to play if I exchange on e5, and then I can aim for occupying these two outposts. It seemed like a simple enough strategy to me. If we look at the theory here, well, white doesn't really score that great with any of the moves. d5 doesn't score well at all. Not entirely sure why. It seems logical, but it also kind of makes sense that this is a little bit too committal. We get some Spanish pawn structure where black hasn't really weakened his queen side yet, so many ways to play. Knight e2 in the way is interesting because it defends the d4 pawn, keeps the tension without allowing the pin with bishop g4. So I would actually now say knight e2 is interesting. Anyway, I exchange on e5, which I don't think is a mistake yet. Next move, though, is indicative of the kind of relaxed state that I was in when I was playing this game. Queen e2. What does that do? What does it really pursue? Is not very easy to say. I wanted to develop this knight to d2, and I could have just done this immediately, though, like this, or I could have played bishop to g5 immediately and then knight to d2. I had some idea of defending the bishop on d3, but once the queen moved to c7, there's really no need for that. So most moves would have been better than this. At the same time, it's not really a critical mistake, or it's not a decisive weakening of the position, so just a useful move anyway. So the idea that I had was to develop the knight to a useful square through f1 without first castling. This saves the tempo, because white will get to move the knight and then not have to move the rook from f1, and he'll castle later. But black immediately starts to exploit my slow play with knight to h5. Now g3 is the only way to prevent the knight from coming to f4. This allows some exchanges, and I finally put my knight on e3. Have to go back, and now I finally castle. So I kind of got my knights to good squares, but black also has a very solid and comfortable position, no bad pieces, so nothing to worry about. And here black immediately goes for the opening, for control of the open file. And here's where I started to play speculatively, and the first part of the speculation is that I decided to kind of ignore the d file for now, even though there's some really important invasion squares on that file, and I just started to move my knight to f5, hoping to get some attack. And sometimes attack can be good in a rapid game, but this was not the case here. It didn't work out for me. Black begins his play on the queen side, and this now is aiming to come to c4, possibly play c4. And what I did was not quite right. I decided to sacrifice this pawn on a2, and that was an error in judgment. Black plays a6, and here I should have kind of admitted my mistake, taken on d8, and just put the bishop to a solid square where it's defended. That would leave the pawn on e4 unprotected, but there would be some tactics that could work out to my advantage. I could take, and then I could take on h6. And if black takes, I give this check. The knight doesn't have to be lost immediately, but after knight g5 and pawn to h4. White regains the piece, and this position is roughly balanced, and it's probably even slightly more comfortable to play as white because the black king is exposed. Instead, I went for bishop to d3, and I allowed this pawn grab. There would be some fighting back if I had played b4, but this is getting very unclear. Somewhat similar to the game, which I'll show now. The game is now entering a decisive stage. Everything is on fire. The knight on a5 hangs, the bishop on b3 hangs, and here is where white miscalculated. I miscalculated. After bishop b3, I thought I could use these two knights and get a dangerous attack going, even if I lose some material on the queen side. The first move is very natural. I should have done here something like rook to b1, but I played this, seeing that after this I'm down the exchange because black is going to regain the piece. What I had hoped for is that whilst black is regaining the piece, I can drum up an attack. And my idea would have worked out if black had taken on h6, then I would have taken, I would have played queen check and escaped with the bishop. And I'm down the exchange, but I have a really dangerous knight on f5, and I have some play here going on. I have a safer king, and this would have made sense. But unfortunately my attack backfired because black just ignored my sacrifice and went away, and I still have a bishop hanging on d3. And now this isn't going anywhere. I cannot save my bishop, and I try to gang up an attack, throwing the piece into the fire, but that just loses another piece, and now my knights and queen miraculously cannot really do anything useful, and this pawn in the meantime is running down the board. I could have done something like this, but this is still hopeless. Instead, I miscalculated. I overlooked a defensive idea from black, and I went for this, assuming that black cannot take it. And this seems like a useful move because it hits the rook, and it threatens to invade with the queen here, and a lot of other nasty things. But the miscalculation is that after this, it turns out that black can simply walk away with his king, and I didn't see that the knight is defending the queen. So my whole idea fell through, and after this, black defended against all threats and is up for full rook, while the pawn is also about to queen. And on the next move I resigned. So a game that is a bit hard to make much sense of, but I can see that the carelessness in calculation at different stages, starting from a slightly careless move queen e2, it really percolated down to future decisions where I just was playing intuitively, and my intuition wasn't really up to the challenge against the, against the careful opponent. It just backfired. So yeah, the opening wasn't very interesting, but I think many of us have experienced a loss like this that just hard to make sense of, where the tactics that you thought might work out to your advantage actually never really do, and something to learn from in terms of improving intuition, I suppose. Anyway, thank you for watching.